let's welcome Bruzenskey Bois, a first-generation Haitian American and real estate developer and investor in Tampa, Florida. Brzezinski has a diverse background and significant influence in the property management industry. Brzezinski earned a BA in communications from the University of South Florida, including undergraduate studies in architecture. He co-founded People Places Management, LLC, and was recognized by the National Apartment Association for his work in inclusive community management. He also founded our sister organization, the Congressional Black Caucus for New Urbanism. His work has been featured in numerous publications for his dedication to historic Black towns, and he is influential in groups like the National Town Builders Association and the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. I know Brzezinski personally as a friend, and after a family tragedy in 2020, I've been amazed he's shown remarkable spirit and resilience, taking on a fatherly role with now a very extended family. Brzezinski's contributions beyond the professional, the personal are quite significant. He's a very special man. And I also credit him with spurring and encouraging the formation of CNU Latino. It wouldn't have happened without you, Brzezinski, so thank you. And now the floor is yours, so unmute and take over.
Thank you, my brother, and it's such an honor to be here, and I'm really excited to just continue to do the work with you guys on the ground, knowing you guys personally. Thank you for everybody that took time out to just have this conversation with us. A lot of these conversations are conversations we're constantly having daily, so it feels good to be able to bring some of these things to the forefront. But the question I'm going to have today, question number one, that's going to be the theme today. Question number one, where you from? Let's let that sink in. That's a real important question to start with, so we can understand the various subcultures within neighborhoods, and predominantly predominantly comprised of people of the African diaspora, right? And I don't want to just say Black people, because oftentimes we get misunderstood that Black people just mean you're in darker color. There is a rainbow, an array of Black people that I'm still learning about within subcultures here in America and internationally. So to tell you a little bit about myself, why am I qualified to speak on this subject? Start with, who is Brzezinski? I'm of Haitian descent. I'm first generation. So I was born here in the United States. And the lovely young woman that you see in the middle is my mother, who is a Haitian immigrant. The picture on the left, you'll see her always doing philanthropy work my whole life. I've always seen her take these trips. If you're religious, she didn't do it with any church, any organization. It was just something that she did on her own, to just always go back, donate clothes. Half of my clothes sometimes, because as a kid growing up, you're pissed off. Everything, save this, is going to go to Haiti. Stuff filling up in the house. If you're of Haitian American descent, first generation, you know about these struggles. But it's good to see that some of my things and our things and family being utilized. While looking at this slide, you're also going to see that my mom is in a store. What I thought was unique about this picture, and why I wanted to present this, is that she's not working as just a clerk at the store. She actually opened up her own beauty supply store in the middle of North Miami in the early 90s. And I thought that was significant because she was able to navigate the system here in the United States, even after coming to this country, being jailed, getting thrown in jail just for being here, getting out, not speaking the language, but the ability to crawl her way up and start a business, was remarkable for me to see as a child. Played a huge part in my perspective of what fight a Haitian American or a Haitian person can bring. But also, it also brought up some things for me growing up Haitian here in America. There was a huge disconnect between when you're Haitian growing up here in America to when you're a Black American to versus when you're a Jamaican. Next slide, please. Here you see on this next slide, you'll see me getting the influence of a young businessman. To the left is this young kid putting on my dad's shades and his sunglasses and saying, I'm going to be a businessman, but during the day in school, I would always have to fight my Haitian roots and culture, not knowing certain things. So it did a couple of things for us. The middle picture, you'll see a group of us who all grew up in the same neighborhood, who ended up going to school in a different neighborhood, right? And even that dichotomy of being in Broward County and then in Dade County. So these are all my friends that were from Dade, and we ended up going to school together in Broward County. And the question was still, where you from? You know, it was still a different dynamic between how we did things 30 minutes, 40 minutes away than from how the other kids did things. So it also formed, you know, again, a bond within us. And then also in my summers, I would spend those summers traveling back and forth to New York to visit family. So if you know anything about South Florida, you'll know that South Florida is very vehicle driven. So anywhere and everywhere you go, if you're at a bus stop, you're looked at as like, ugh, like it's kind of embarrassing. You're less than, you know, if you don't have a car, like, what are you doing? But then on the flip side, I would go to New York for the summer and see the total opposite. No one had a car. No one wanted to get a car. It was like we just drove around in the train. It was all walkable. Again, a totally different subculture, right? And then you'll see the picture on the right is myself at the time in high school, where I would go get these. So the reason why this is important is because in South Florida, in the 90s, if you had a gold grill in your mouth, you were just like, you were that person. Like, oh my gosh, you have a gold grill. But in New York, so the price to get a gold grill in South Florida, you're talking about, I had a friend of mine who had 4 gold teeth at the bottom. And I mean, in high school, he paid like $1,200, $1,500. Then you go to New York for that same gold teeth, $100, $200 downtown Brooklyn. The value of the gold teeth and that perception was looked at completely different up north than it was down south. So here was me exploiting that opportunity in New York to buy the $200 grill. And I said, give me everything. I said, I'm going back home. I'm going to have 12 gold teeth in my mouth. And this is, you see me in high school with 12 gold teeth. So it's an interesting subcultures within being in Miami and South Florida, being Haitian, and then having to navigate around other, you would think, you know, we're all Black, we're all in the same neighborhood, we're all going to the same schools, but it wasn't like that. It was still, you're Haitian, your family does this, or that's the Jamaican, and it was that. And then when I go to New York, it was like this up north, down south, totally different experience. One of the stories that I remember that stood out to me the most was at the time growing up in Miami, being flamboyant, being flashy was a big thing. We love to match our clothes and everything that we do, even our shoelaces. So I had a nice outfit one time running the streets of New York and Brooklyn with my brother. We were always trying to chase girls, talk to girls. We were just like, okay, we met some girls, I don't know how, and we were in the Bronx to go visit them. Now, mind you, my family was in Brooklyn. I never been to the Bronx, but I was excited. I was just like, you know, listen to all the music as a kid. I want to just explore New York. We get off this train in the Bronx, and my outfit again is blue. So I had blue shoelaces trying to match. Lo and behold, somebody came up to me and was like, yo, his exact words were, what those laces be like? And as a kid from South Florida, I'm like, they be like matching with my shoes. I don't know where we're going. And sure enough, my brother gave me that look like, we're in the wrong neighborhood. We need to get out of here. Your shoelaces are going to get us killed. And before I could even think about my shoelaces, I thought my outfit was, you know, pretty fly. I thought I looked pretty good. He gave me the look and we ran out of there as quickly as we can. So again, being in a new environment, still a Black environment, Black community, but I was in the wrong neighborhood wearing the wrong things. So fast forward, I get older. Being in a park as a child growing up saved my life. So I wanted to design super cool parks to keep kids off the streets. So I wanted to go to school for architecture. I had a decision to make at that time. Growing up in Miami, going back and forth to New York, I said, am I going to go to a HBCU, which some of you may know or may not know, it's a historically Black college? Or am I going to go to a PWI, which is a predominantly white college? I did get accepted to a HBCU. I was going to go. And then I had to think to myself, I personally didn't think I could handle going to HBCU because of growing up very fast in Miami, and at the time, and the perception that I had of HBCUs. So I decided to go to a predominantly white institution. And lo and behold, of course, I still partied a little bit, had some fun. But then as I got older in my professional world, I realized there's also another subculture, right? Now, every Black person who just graduated college, you know, not to say we fight or we don't get along, but there's a whole community of folks who graduated from HBCU. And I can't see the chat. I love to see folks' reactions, but, you know, shout out to all my people on the call right now who attended a HBCU, the Howards, you know, the FAMUs, you know, and shout out to everybody who did attend predominantly white institutions. That's another conversation of a subculture that I think is important to acknowledge, especially when you're doing different work and community engagement. It allows you to be able to navigate your relationships in a professional setting. So I go to USF. It is a master's program. I study architecture, then get into the School of Architecture, started working in the music industry. Decided that, okay, well, after college, I'm going to be P. Diddy. I'm going to get into the music industry. It seemed like music is a reoccurring theme for the three of us panelists, which I like to hear. We got one person that dances, the other has music for rebuilding, which I think is super cool. And then I landed on property management. Next slide. So a buddy of mine actually introduced me to the beautiful world of property management. I was just looking for a job. And at the time, you know, I could get discounted rent. I said, oh, this is pretty cool. You know, I can leave the music thing alone. Got into property management, fell in love with the industry, worked my way up, really saw myself doing, you know, a lot of good things in property management. What was interesting was at the time, my mentor who taught me real estate always worked at rougher properties and I always worked at high-end properties. And we would always have this conversation of, I would be on the phone with him and he's talking to his residents like we would talk after we get off work. And I'm like, yo, you talk to your residents like that? He's like, yeah, I just, you know, we can get along like that. And I always thought that was interesting how he would work in rougher, what would consider to be rougher or lower income communities. And I would feel like, man, I don't know how you do it because it's hard for me to navigate in those spaces because at that time, you have to be in a different mindset. You have to know the language, know how to navigate. And it was hard for me to do that in a professional setting. It was either I was on or I was off. So again, understanding that. And then I met a guy named Frank Starkey who taught me the beautiful world. Next slide, please. Of New Urbanism. And this is one of the projects that we were able, I watched him develop and build, and I had the privilege of managing. And then he introduced me to the world of CNU. Next slide. And when I got into CNU, I said, man, this is it. I know exactly what I'm gonna do with my life. This is gonna be, I know how I'm gonna change the world through making walkable cities. But then as Fernando stated, a tragedy hit at the time in my life. I lost my mom and my sister same day. Ended up, by God's grace, adopting my niece and nephews, becoming a single father of 5. Full-time, 4 is with me full-time now. But at that time is when I realized and I said, hey, God, what is it that you want me to do with my life? What is it that you would have me do? Next slide, please. And that's when I was pointed to create the Congressional Black Caucus for New Urbanism, and using this organization in order to be able to bridge the gap and allow people to understand people that look like me, that they can be a part of the neighborhood development process. Next slide. So it brought me back to, as a kid, when I would be listening to hip hop and understanding hip hop in New York, different neighborhoods and places. The reason why I think this is so significant is because what hip hop did was it became, and I'm going to wrap it up here shortly. It became our newspaper, our voice to understand what was going on in Texas. When we listened to Scarface and Ghetto Boys, we understood what was going on in the 5th Ward and the 3rd Ward in Houston. We understood the dialogue. We understood their challenges through the music. Then we listened to NWA in New York. NWA in Los Angeles. We understand what was going on in the streets of LA, vice versa, and through that pattern, right? Fast forward, next slide. And here comes Mr. Slauson Boy himself, who identifies himself with his neighborhood. A lot of music and art folks identify with where they're from. The question number one is a song off of this album called Slauson Boy Volume 2 by Nipsey Hussle, to me, who is one of the greatest new urbanists within the hip hop community. And he has a song called Where You From? And everybody who within this culture understand the value of that question, because you can learn a lot about somebody by just asking that one question, and then it can go into a lot more things. So next slide. Here you see Nipsey Hussle opening the grand opening for his commercial building that he opened in South Central Los Angeles in his neighborhood. Next slide. You also see other images of the different businesses that he was able to build through this network, but understanding that culture. Next slide. And this is after he passed. Now I'm going to leave you with a positive legacy, because a lot of folks would just talk about Nipsey Hussle as just a gang member, but gang culture itself is its own whole nother world within subcultures within Black America as well. So understanding the sensitivities of that, this was in a rolling 60s neighborhood. Again, the different subcultures within gangs, understanding that. Next slide. You'll see myself and my partner. This was in Chattanooga, meeting with an organization called Rise. And there we got an opportunity to understand. So you see his shoelaces and his shoes, he can wear that because he's in Chattanooga and it was colorful. But had he been in the Bronx, that probably would have been a problem. But here you see us engaging and talking to community members and really understanding the dynamics of things that you can't Google in the neighborhood, things that you can't find on Wikipedia. You really have to go there and talk to people and meet them where they're at. Next slide, please. So I'm gonna leave you with this. My biggest 5 takeaways of what you learn from my own personal experiences and my stories. First and foremost, acknowledge that there are a lot of subcultures, a lot. And I'm still learning about subcultures within the African diaspora myself. Because I'm Black, I'm not just an expert that just knows it all. I'm going to various places in South America and learning about the Afro-Cuban or the Afro-Latin experience as well, which is completely different from the African American experience. And number 2, don't forget, question number 1, please listen to that song when you guys are done from here. Where you from? Always ask and understand where someone's from. Know the history of that area, because knowing the history of geographically in that area would allow you to have, number 4, a sense of sensitivity to their past traumas. Everyone wants to be acknowledged and recognized for their traumas. So what you don't want to do as an outsider going into the community to try to engage them is not respect their sensitivities and understanding what that community has gone through generationally, because generationally trauma is passed on. And then last but not least, read the room. Know how you're presenting yourself. Know where you're going. At the time I was in the Bronx with blue shoelaces in a blood neighborhood. I didn't read the room. I was still young, but again, from my own personal experiences, understanding the room and the people that you're dealing with is very significant, is very key. If I'm talking to someone in my professional world, knowing that if they graduated from an HBCU versus a PWI can make a difference in our conversation, right? And being able to understand their experiences as well when you're dealing with a client or dealing with community leaders as well, understanding that background. Thank you guys. I really enjoyed it. Again, 10 minutes is never enough for good conversations like this. So I'm going to leave you with that. Next slide is just me saying thank you. If you need my information, I will be more than happy to. Unfortunately, I didn't share it on the slide. My apologies, but I'll be more than happy to put it in the chat for everyone. Please feel free to reach out to me. And thank you guys for this opportunity.
Fantastic presentation, Brzezinski. You brought it all the way back around to Abraham's point, which is essentially read the room, know who you're speaking to. And if you're not one of them, you got to become one of them before you can do anything as intimate and as important as planning a neighborhood. So I think that's the great takeaway here.